So here we go with a revision session over the wellness sphere. Of course, not forgetting all the foundations we set in terms of who we are, the philosophical understandings that we want to share through this course, and the tools that we learned around self-awareness, noticing, refocusing, vision board, connecting with those deeper parts of ourself. But once we got into the wellness sphere section of this course, we were looking at 7 areas. And I'm going to go over those 7 areas as a recap for you and to give you a chance to further reflect on what are the next steps for you. As the very last part of this course enables you to make some commitments, to make some strong intentions that you set with yourself and possibly share with others about what you are going to do, so that you can look back in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, and know what happened as a result, and you can track the changes in your own health and wholeness in your own life. But first, the wellness sphere. So the 7 parts that make up the wellness sphere are that right in the center is the I space, the interior place from which our life springs. And so we've talked about connection with our heart, with our emotions, with our spirit and our deepest intuitive sense, and also connection with our minds, thoughts, and then our behavior that flows out of that. And I encouraged us to pay attention and not to fall into the trap of the wallpaper effect, where it can become so normal to us that we forget to see it. So let's think of all the ways we can notice the quality of our eye space and how we can develop that for being really the foundational piece for the rest of our healthy and whole approach to life. Well, the first thing I think is that we can spot our eye space in adversity. Adversity is a wonderful friend to us to highlight things that we wouldn't necessarily see ourselves. So I'm talking about the minor irritations of life, the everyday frustrations that we face, but also the shit and fan moments in our life when it really does go Pete Tong. And whilst this must all be couched in an acceptance of what is, in a real positive regard of negative emotions, that they are normal and okay and to be embraced and relaxed towards. There is another degree of learning that we can get when we see our response to adversity. I think it's been in the times of greatest struggle in my life that I have taken the biggest steps forward in terms of my personal growth, self-understanding, and the way I choose to respond to life. And so every time adversity comes, it offers us a lens through which to see ourselves with compassion, but really noticing, how do I respond when the pressure's on? When I'm squeezed, what comes out? And the content of our inner world, our eye space, will come up and meet us when we are under pressure. It's like the pressure forces things out of the cracks and we get to see it differently. So having lots of time to reflect and journal, the more the adversity gets dialed up, the more intentional we can be about carving out solitude and silence to really be with ourselves, to coach ourselves, to listen in that space to ourselves. Which leads me on to the second environment in which I think we can notice, name, and improve our eye space, and that is the relationship we have with ourselves. So it's in those moments when nobody else is around, when the lights go out. Maybe that's last thing at night or first thing in the morning when we're waking up, or maybe it's when we're sat in the car waiting for our kids to come out of football, or in the liminal spaces between activities. Notice the condition of our internal world. What are some of the things our mind is drawn to? What are some of the places our emotions settle? That will give us a clue as to how at peace we are in that eye space, how connected and grounded we are feeling in that eye space, and can give us some clues as to what to do next with that. And then the last environment I think that is really important for us to pay attention to is our connection with Source. So, whatever we put in that divine space in our theoretical model of the world, in our worldview, how do we think about that thing or that person or that divine being? Is that something that's life affirming, or do we cower and want to hide away? Are we drawn towards life with Source and in Source, or are we perhaps rigid and controlled about that part of our world? And as we notice the quality, we can also notice what fires up and inspires our connection to Source. Are there certain people or practices or places, rituals that serve us? And are there some that have become dry, or we need to shift around? Are there certain people that drain us rather than energize us in that Source space? And I think across the whole range of beliefs and across the whole range of practices, there is a quality of life, a wellspring of life that we can tell whether we are in tune with and we are in flow with, or whether we have perhaps fallen out of alignment with. And we need to have a thorough review of our spiritual life and our practices so that it really is feeding us in the deepest possible way. So then let's move on to the side of the segments of the wellness sphere that include move, eat, and rest. So our movement life is largely a physical life, but it's also how we think and feel about movement. So as you review your movement practice, ask yourself, what is your sense about movement? What are your beliefs about it? Are you looking for ways to move your body? Are you throwing yourself in dynamically to situations and opportunities, whether that's at an intense level or just at whatever level your body allows? Or are you hanging back? Are you reserved? Are you shrinking inside yourself? And in terms of eating, not only the rhythms and patterns of your eating, but how do you feel energetically about your relationship with food? Have you got lots of compulsions going on, or do you have onerous restrictions going on in your food relationship? Is there perhaps guilt and shame in there? Doing an audit of your relationship with food and eating and not eating will give you lots of clues as to the next steps for you. So notice and name what that is, the opportunities that arise for you, and the commitments you want to make in terms of your eating and your food relationship with food and drink. And of course, that leads us on to rest. And we talked in detail earlier on in the course about different types of rest, be that sleep or daily patterns of rest, weekly patterns of rest, and annual patterns of rest. And I know for me that was particularly impactful this time around, and I am looking at putting in more fervent practices of weekly rest where I switch the phone off. I'm just with my kids and my husband, and we're engaging in life practices together that really pull me into a slower pace of life. So for you, where is your relationship with rest at? Do you feel an internal motor that is driving you all the time, and rest is inconvenient because it clashes with your schedule? Are you able to think about sleep as a gift to your body and your soul and your spirit, something you look forward to? You enjoy going to sleep at night and you wake up feeling refreshed, or is your sleep disturbed, or is it something that you are reluctant to go to at the end of the day? And time out and holidays, how do you feel about rest? What's that like for you? How is it serving you? And of course, last week we came on to look at play and give and let go. So I just want you to do an assessment quickly with me of how you relate to play, how you are in those spaces, the opportunities you have to enjoy yourself, to relish and indulge your interests, how your dreams are coming along. Do you have things that you really want to do and you enable yourself to do them? consistently? Or are you thwarted in your interests and life is a bit of a drudgery and you're going through the motions? That's the time to lean into this segment of play. And how about your life of service? Are you continually reminding yourself to live a bigger life, to expand your horizons, not just to care about your own interests and those of your immediate circle, but perhaps your community or the wider community, including people who are strange to you, strangers, or people who share very different ways of seeing the world? It's a real challenge for us to serve people just because they are people, rather than because they have loads of connections with us in the way that we live or in the nationality or particular ethnic group that we share. So how are you able to expand yourself and maybe even dream in really big ways of the gift that your life could be as we expand by service in our hearts and our minds and our emotions, so we will expand in other ways too. You know, the beauty about the integrative life is that we are connected. And whilst this means that one area of our lives can pull us down in a vicious cycle, it also means the reverse is true, that as we expand, we can raise and increase in a virtuous cycle. And there is a huge body of work, which I have drawn from a lot for this course, but haven't really alluded to, around the integrative framework. A thinker and writer called Ken Wilber and Claire Graves and many other people have contributed amazing work to this subject, and it really is challenging some of our norms about how we see life and how the physical, the spiritual, the mental, emotional, the communal and the individual are all fundamentally connected. And it's really worth, if you want ways to take on the learnings you have here in Healthy and Whole, it's worth looking at the whole area of integrative philosophy, integrative theory, and also integrative practice as well. And we are at the final segment of our wellness sphere, which is the topic of letting go. Again, a way that expands us, that challenges our narrow, linear perceptions of life and invites us to see new perspectives and also to embrace people as they are in all of their challenges and limitations and live a larger life. And it may be that for you, just simply the practice of letting go of your thoughts will bring a lot more peace and grounding to your life. Or is it for you letting go of past hurts and choosing to forgive? You know, if there was one area of the wellness sphere and one practical action that I would be the most keen to encourage you to go the distance on, to put the work in, it would be this tool of forgiveness. I literally think it is the single most transformational tool that I have worked with, both in my self-work and as a professional. I have sat with countless people as they've gone through the steps I taught you just in the last section, of making a choice to forgive and let go, of opening their heart space and genuinely releasing all kinds of thoughts, feelings, behaviors, decisions from their heart. And I have watched the light come on in people's eyes, sometimes even their whole complexion change, just with that one tool that I've taught you about forgiveness. And it's really important to remember the person that we most often need to forgive is ourselves. I very rarely hear this taught anywhere, but the phrase that goes, Naomi, I choose to forgive you, is perhaps the single most powerful phrase I can give you. Naming the ways in which I have let myself down, the ways I haven't lived up to my own expectations, the ways I've caused pain to others and I feel bad about it. Naming those ways, being honest with myself. You know, there's nothing to be afraid of when we are grounded in self-love, when we're curious and open about life. There's nothing to be afraid of in grief. I cause myself grief all the time by the way that I don't meet my own expectations, my own hopes and desires. And that phrase, Naomi, I choose to forgive you, gives me the certainty that I can always come back to that place of grounding in self-love and self-acceptance. I can deal with the resentments towards myself that inevitably build up as I just go through my normal life, and I can wipe the slate clean and start again. I read a book recently called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by a guy called Vishen Lakhiani. And he described in that book a 10-day Zen retreat that he did, where there was a lot of time spent in solitary meditation. And that the participants on this retreat, including him, were wired up to an fMRI scanner that measured their brainwaves, and they could get a readout of their brainwaves that would tell them what the impact of the meditations that they were taught was on their brain electromagnetic fields and on their brain energy. And he describes in this book how on the very last day, they were given the tool of forgiveness to practice in their own meditation time. And that Lakhiani had a list of people that he wanted to forgive. And very last on the list was an old business partner who had betrayed his trust, stolen over $100,000 from the business, and then proceeded to threaten legal action and threaten all kinds of criminal repercussions on the business that Vishen was running. And he said he had so much anger that he needed to process that he left this one till last. But as he reached the moment where he had honestly named what he felt about this man and was opening his heart to forgive, he says, I heard a beep, and the alpha waves were registering the highest level they had reached that whole time. It was in the moment of the biggest forgiveness release that I saw the potential of my mind for greatness. And that was one of the reasons why he went on to write this book about the code of the extraordinary mind. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful reflexes we can develop. So I hope that gives you food for thought to add to all of the thought you've already had on your own wellness sphere, on the journey that you are on of healing and health and wholeness and commitment to growth. But you know, I don't want to just leave you with food for thought. Thoughts are easy to come by. It's action that actually really changes things. So right here, after we've done this review of the wellness sphere, I want to give you an acronym. It's the word GROW. And it's an acronym I use all the time in coaching, and I want you to take away and work through yourself. The acronym stands for goal, reality, options, and will. Make yourself some goals. Make them smart, make them specific and measurable and realistic. Make them also a stretch. And then look at the reality. Notice a name. Where are you? Be the reporter. Observe where you're at on each of the segments of the 7 segments of the wellness sphere, and also on any of the other material we've looked at. Don't pretend, but own it. Own your own story, because then you can write a brave new ending. And then look at the options. What can you do? What are the choices that you do get to make? What can you control? Remembering there's a lot about your life that you can't actually control. And then lastly, W is for will. You get to engage your will. You have the privilege of self-actualizing in this life, of bringing out the gift that's inside you. You're the only one that can do that. What options have you got, and what choice will you make? Commit pen to paper. Commit to say out loud to a trusted friend, these are the specific actions I am taking right now as a result of the new information, the new insights and inspiration I have got on this Healthy and Whole course. Give them permission to track with you, to maybe ask you, have you done those things you committed to? Have you honored yourself and stayed true to your own potential growth right through to the details? So GROW, take that away right now and do the business that you need to do in order to turn these great insights into actions, into habits, and into your new life.